यशोदनन्दन व्रज जनरञ्जन यमुनतीरावनचारी जय राधा माधव कुंज विहारी जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे जय प्रभुपदा 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 जय गुरुदेवा जय गुरुदेवा जय गुरुदेवा जय गुरुदेवा श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय श्रील गुरुदेव की जय गौर प्रेमानंदे ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय We are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, titled General History, and Chapter 3, titled Liberation from the Illusory Energy, and Text 4. Evam shristani bhutani pravishta panchabdhatubihi ekada dashadhatmanam vibhajan jushate gunan. Evam shristani bhutani pravishta panchadhatubihi ekada dashadatmanam vibhajan jushate gunan. Evam shristani bhutani pravishta panchadhatubihi ekada dashadhatmanam vibhajan jushate gunan. Evam shristani bhutani pravishta panchadhatubihi ekada dashadatmanam vibhajan jushate gunan. Evam shristani bhutani pravishta panchadhatubihi ekada dashadatmanam vibhajan jushate gunan. Evam shristani bhutani pravishta panchadhatubihi ekada dashadatmanam vibhajan jushate gunan. Evam shristani bhutani pravishta panchadhatubihi ekada dashadatmanam vibhajan jushate gunan. Evam shristani bhutani pravishta panchadhatubihi ekada dashadatmanam vibhajan jushate gunan. Evam shristani bhutani pravishta panchadhatubihi ekada dashadatmanam vibhajan jushate gunan. Evam, in the manner just described, srishtani, created, bhutani, the living beings, pravishtaha, having entered, panchadhatuvihi, created by the 5 gross elements: earth, water, fire, air and ether. Ekadha, one-fold, as the overseer of the mind. Dashadha, tenfold, as the overseer of the 5 senses of perception and 5 organs of action. Atmanam, himself. Vibhajan, dividing. Jushate, he engages. He causes the individual soul to engage. Gunan, with the material modes. Translation and purport by the disciples of His Divine Grace, Abhay Charanaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. The super soul enters the material bodies of the created beings, activates the mind and senses, and thus causes the conditioned souls to approach the three modes of material nature for sense gratification. Please repeat after me. The super soul enters the material bodies of the created beings, activates the mind and senses, and thus causes the conditioned souls to approach the three modes of material nature for sense gratification. Purport. The following is a summary of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakura's commentary on this verse. The one super soul enters the gross material elements, earth, water, fire, air, and ether, and uses the activated material mind to certainly divide the sensory activities of the conditioned souls among the five knowledge acquiring senses: the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin, and by a further gross division, the five working senses: the hands, legs, speech, genitals, and anus. Because liberated souls have a strong tendency to serve the Lord, they are not attracted by the dualities of material good and evil. They derive their pleasure through devotion and love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who eternally enjoys His own transcendental pastimes beyond the material manifestation. When the conditioned souls forget their loving relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they develop illicit desires. Therefore, unable to serve the form, taste, fragrance, and other aspects of Lord Vishnu, these souls become bound to the bitter fruits of fruitive activities. But if their love of Godhead is somehow or other awakened, the conditioned souls can dovetail all their sensory activities in the service of the Lord's transcendental pastimes. Actually, all materialistic activities are most undesirable, but the conditioned souls, under the influence of illusion, sees apparent distinctions between good and bad, pleasing and displeasing, and so on. The Lord, the super soul, having entered the collective and individual consciousness of the living entities, knows the heart of everyone. Therefore, when a sincere soul aspires for spiritual perfection, the Lord frees him from material bondage and arouses his propensity to serve the Lord of Vaikuntha. Love of Godhead flourishes in the variegated flavors of transcendental enjoyment. In ignorance, however, the conditioned soul considers himself the proper object of service and thus misunderstands the entire existential situation. Mama jnanatimirandhasya jnananjana shalakaya chakshuranmilitam yena tasmai Sri Gurave Namah. Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupaha Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Sadvaidam Savadhutam Sahagana Raghunadhanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvai Parjana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitam Cha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Taptaganchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo 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 Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Romapada Swami Niti Namne Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namne Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pacharcha Deshatare Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. एवं सृष्टानि भूतानि प्रविष्टा पंचधातुभिः एकदा दशदात्मानं विभजन् जुषते गुणान्. The super soul enters the material bodies of the created beings, activates the mind and senses, and thus causes the conditioned souls to approach the three modes of material nature for sense gratification. So, this is the continuing discussion on what is the question that's being answered now? Nature of and activities of illusory energy or Maya, right? So again, the questions that's being, just to kind of catch up on where we are, we had King Nimi has been asking these questions to the Nava Yogendras, and the first question was what is the highest good, and what is the highest good that Kavi explains. The highest good is Bhagavata Dharma, which actually provides us fearlessness. That's what the summation of the answer for the first question. And the second question that was asked was by King Nimi was qualities of the practitioner. What are the qualities of such a practitioner of Bhagavata Dharma? And this time, the second of the Nava Yogendras, Havi, explains that there are these three different variations of the practitioners. And what are those three variations? Kanishta, Madhyama, and Uttama adhikaris. And he explains about the different qualities and how they behave. That was the whole aspect of the second chapter that we discussed, later part of the second chapter. And now in the third question that King Nimi asked in the first verse is, what is the nature and activities of the Maya or the illusory energy? And he also explains why we need to know about this Maya and illusory energy. And I think several the previous speakers spoke about it. Why do we need to find out about the illusory energy or Maya? I mean, if you are going to be yes.
Well, we're here in the atmosphere of Maya, so we need to know our enemy per se.
Right. Yeah. So it's actually explained that Srila Prabhupada quotes many times that when you become a devotee, right, when you get started on devotional service, Maya declares war. Right? Prabhupada says that you are at war with Maya, or the illusory energy. Sorry? Yeah. Yeah, both ways actually, of course. Yeah. So when you are at war with the enemy, what is the strategy? How to win a war? You need to know what are their defenses, right? What are their offenses and what are their defenses? Because if the more information, that's why we have all these intelligence agencies, right? They're always kind of behind the enemy lines trying to figure out where they are located and what they are doing and all that stuff. And so when we know exactly our enemy's defenses and offenses in terms of their weaknesses and their strengths, then we will be able to defend ourselves and also be able to kind of fight the war in an effective way. So that's why, and so in these verses, now the third of the Nava Yogendras, Antariksha, is answering this question by explaining how the jiva is wandering how Jiva comes into existence. That's what in the last couple of verses that's being explained. And then how he kind of wanders in this samsara, in this world. And then later on in this chapter, then King Nimi goes on to ask how you can overcome this material and this maya or illusory energy, and the answers are explained. Like that, there are totally 9 questions that will be answered in the next couple of chapters. So in this particular verse, in the previous verse that we read yesterday, Antariksha started explaining that basically how by the glance of the Supreme Lord on the Mahatattva or the Pradhana, how it impregnates the Pradhana, and then this whole creation gets started, right? So I think both Kalpataru Mataji and also Sevapriya explained this whole how the Supreme Lord comes into, is it Garbhodakshaya? Kshirodakshaya Vishnu, right? Is in the sleeping position in the causal ocean, and then he is the one who glances at the material world or Mahatattva, material nature. That's also called Pradhana. And when he glances at the Pradhana, that's when the living entities are impregnated into the material nature, right? And then in this verse, it's being explained how the super soul actually enters into the bodies of all these living beings. And also it explains how the mind, that by the entering of the super soul into the material bodies of the created beings, how it activates the mind and the senses, and also the rest of the elements that needs to be created. So Mahavishnu in the form of Kshirodakshaya Vishnu glances at the material world, Pradhana, to start to impregnate the living beings, and then then at that point it is said that this is all explained in more detail in the second canto in the creation subject. So there it's explained that the 3 modes are initially inactive, but when the super soul enters the Mahat Tattva, that's when these 3 modes get activated along with the mind and senses. So initially it is said that Mahat Tattva is in Sattva mode and in the Rajas mode, which is called Shutra Tattva, and then it generates Ahankara, which is in the Tamasic mode, which is ignorance, mode of ignorance, and that's where the goodness, passion, and ignorance, the material modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance are generated. And then those things generate the mind and the 10 sense devatas, are the what you call the presiding deities of the 10 senses. And then also they generate the prana and the 10 senses and intelligence. And then also the 5 sense objects. It's called, the word that's used in the second canto is tanmatras. So, and then the 5 elements. What are the 5 elements? Ether, air, fire, water, and earth. And also it's explained there that from sound, ether is generated, and from ether, touch is generated, and from touch, air comes. From air, form to fire, and from fire, taste, and from taste, water is generated, and from water, smell, and from smell, earth. So this is how the 5 elements and the 5 sense objects come into existence. right? And now the super soul, because of the super soul actually is being generated. All these things are coming into active state. Before that, they were all in dormant state. And it's also explained in the there is a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, second chapter, text 33. Asau gunamair bhaver bhuta shukmendriyatma bhibihi swa nirmiteshu nirvishto bhunkte bhuteshu tadgunan. In this verse also, it's a similar verse to this one, where it's explained how the super soul enters into the bodies. The super soul enters into the bodies of the created beings who are influenced by the modes of material nature and causes them to enjoy the effects of these modes by the subtle mind. And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says that there are 8,400,000 species of living beings, beginning from the intellectual being Brahma down to the insignificant ant. And all of them are enjoying the material world according to the desires of subtle mind and gross material body. The gross material body is based on the conditions of the subtle mind, and the senses are created according to the desire of the living being. The Lord, as Paramatma, helps the living being to get material happiness because the living being is helpless in all respects in obtaining what he desires. He proposes and the Lord disposes. In another sense, the living beings are parts and parcels of the Lord. They are therefore one with the Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita, the living beings in all varieties of bodies have been claimed by the Lord as his sons. The sufferings and enjoyments of the sons are indirectly the sufferings and enjoyments of the Father. Still, the Father is not in any way affected directly by the suffering and enjoyment of the sons. He is so kind that he constantly remains with the living being as Paramatma and always tries to convert the living being towards the real happiness. So, the Lord is being so merciful in this aspect on giving the opportunity for the living beings to take whatever the body type that they need, that they want to fulfill their desires. He's giving so many options, 8,400,000 species of types of options. And we are still not satisfied. We still want to go through those things, right? And of course, us being part and parcels of the Supreme Lord, I mean, he is very compassionate and he is very merciful. So he is trying to fulfill the desires, but at the same time, he is trying to also guide us on the path, on the spiritual path, so that we can go back to our original position, or discover our original, realize our original position. But unfortunately, we are so engrossed in our own material attachments and desires and things like that. So it's like we first of all, we don't even come understand, most people don't even come to this understanding that there is this aspect of it. And so unfortunately, with that ignorance, they are constantly going through these cycles of birth and death and constantly going through the sufferings, right? Prabhupada says that the sufferings and enjoyments of the sons, of course, they don't affect the Lord directly, but it does affect him indirectly because he is a compassionate father. So he is constantly remaining with the living beings. So it is described, actually this, the purport that the disciples of Srila Prabhupada gave here is a summary of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's commentary. And in these three paragraphs, they kind of summarize the entire aspect of what is the material nature, and how these different elements are there, and how how the individual living entity is kind of wandering in this material nature, and what they're supposed to do and what they're not supposed to do. All these things are clearly described here. And the analogy that's given by our acharyas is the house is like a body. The body is like a house, right? Of course, house is like a body too. It depends on, so like when we build a house, we build it based on what we like to do, right? Same thing, the body, it's generated based on our desires, what we like to do. And of course, the Lord is the one who is sanctioning, or the Lord is the one who is giving, okay, based on your desires, you get this. Because sometimes some people spend all their time in the living room, right? So they design the living room according to their need, and some people maybe bathroom. Right? So it depends on what their desires are, what their needs are. So accordingly they design, and accordingly the Lord kind of gives them those material facilities, right? But the thing is, our duty is to identify what is the purpose of this body, and why, and how do we do that? Through sadhana bhakti. By practicing the devotional service, sadhana bhakti, we can identify the purpose. And of course, we see that our body is changing in a gradual progression. But unfortunately, most people don't recognize or don't try to understand, because actually the changing of the body is actually reminding us about the purpose of our life, or our purpose of this body. But people, of course, derive different meanings. They say, oh, I'm getting old, so I need to accumulate more money because I need to work, I need to figure out for my retirement, or I need to travel the world, or I have my bucket list that I need to kick the bucket list, right? So people have these different ideas, different ways to approach the reminder. Like in the case of Ravana, when he was praying to, when he was meditating, or he was doing his tapasya to get the benedictions from, who did he get the benedictions from? Brahma. So he was doing, what did he do? Because Brahma was not appearing, so he was actually chopping off his heads and putting in the fire. And that's how Brahma appeared. Finally he said, this guy is going to kill himself. Of course he had 10 heads, so he was chopping off one of them. And so as he was chopping off, Ravana was supposedly a very intelligent person. He knew all the shastras. So as he was chopping off his heads and he was putting it into the fire, he was able to read what's on his forehead, of one of the heads, I guess. And so basically he was supposed to be, according to the Brahmas, because it's said that Brahma writes on all of our foreheads what is going to happen. It's all already there. So you're looking, you're trying to look at you. Yeah, you have to chop off your head to even look at it. Don't try that. So your guru knows what's on your forehead. That's how he's guiding you. So he was, he saw that he was going to be killed by a human being or man. And so that's why when Brahma appeared, the benediction that he asked was, but he thought that Brahma might have made a mistake, because I'm such a powerful living being. Brahma is getting too old. So he thought that, old age is actually bad for Brahma. That's why he wrote it wrong. So that's why he didn't ask for the benediction not to be killed by a human being. And of course, Lord Ramachandra appeared as a human being, and that was his thing. And of course, then there are personalities like Dasharatha in the same Ramayana, where he saw just one single piece of white hair in his thing, and he felt that it was need for him to take Vanaprastha and to give up the kingdom, and that's how he wanted to coronate Lord Ramachandra. Of course, nowadays, the more white hair we have, the more we want to be in high positions, right? So our goal is to identify the purpose through sadhana bhakti, identify the purpose of this body. And of course, a serious sadhaka goes through, in this verse it is explained that how, because all materialistic activities are most undesirable. And of course, but the conditioned soul, under the influence of illusion, sees apparent distinctions between good and bad. Even though everything is bad, but we try to see what is good and what is bad, and also what is pleasing and displeasing, and so on. There is a nice, the way somebody explained the material world is that it's like we are running in a forest. The tiger is hunting, or running, basically tiger is hunting us. It's running behind us. So we went and fell in, the guy is running and he fell in a well. And as he was falling down in the well, he saw that there are a lot of crocodiles inside the well. So he really is like, he tried to hold on to what he thought was a tree branch. As he was holding on to the tree branch, I mean, of course, the tiger came onto the edge of the well, and it's trying to figure out when this guy is going to. And then he saw a tree that's hanging over the well, and there is a honeycomb. And so, and then there is a drop of honey that's falling off of the honeycomb. And so the person is trying to put his tongue to capture the honey, right? Even though we have so many dangers from all over, and of course, I forgot to mention the rope that he thought, the tree that he was thinking that he was hanging onto is not a tree; it's actually a snake. But we are trying to see happiness. We seek happiness with so many dangers all around us. Right? We are still kind of hankering for, and we are trying to find that good and bad and pleasing and displeasing and so on. And so it is said that there are two types of miseries or sorrows that people experience. One is something that is due to lack of facilities, lack of some, I don't have this, I don't have that, or some, and the other one is which is thoughts. Basically, and of course, most people are in the facilities because they're facing misery, they're experiencing the miseries because they always are hankering for something that they don't have. Because whatever you get, you have the next best thing that you want, right? But few people are actually feeling that misery of which is of thought. What is the thought that we should have? It is that we are not able to work towards the goal of this human body, the goal of this life. And when we actually focus on that misery or that aspect of it, then our sadhana or our sadhana bhakti will progress nicely, right? Because we have to see what is the higher aspect of life beyond these material facilities and all these things. So what is that thing that there are So here it's in the purport, it says that therefore when a sincere soul aspires for spiritual perfection, the Lord frees him from material bondage and arouses his propensity to serve the Lord of Vaikuntha. So there are two things in this sentence that are mentioned. What are the two things? Sincerity, right? And the second thing that is needed is, for spiritual perfection, mercy. The Lord actually, it says that when a sincere soul aspires for spiritual perfection, the Lord frees him. So the Lord's mercy actually flows when he sees the sincerity. And there are examples of the sincerity and the mercy, how it happened. In if you just couple of things that from Chaitanya Charitamrita. One time during the Lord Chaitanya's Mahaprakash Leela, all the devotees were coming and offering water to wash the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya. And there was this one lady, her name was Dukhi. Dukhi means sad. So she she was also carrying a pot of water, but she was way at the end of the line. But when Lord Chaitanya saw her, she was very known to be very sincere. Even though her name was Dukhi, she was a very sincere devotee. And so Lord Chaitanya actually asked Swarup Damodar to go and get that. I want that Dukhi to be in the front to offer. So the Lord actually sees the sincerity in people's hearts. And he actually gave her the name Sukhi, right? Which is totally opposite. So she is the most fortunate one. She is actually the qualified to be the most sukha, or happy one, because she received the mercy of the Lord Chaitanya. And of course, sincerity, people, when we say sincere, I am also sincere, Prabhu, I am doing this service. But typically as sadhakas, it's in all of us. Our sincerity is only based on what we want to do or how we want to do, right? And also when we want to do. It's not. But it is said that the sincerity has to be not only sincere but also consistency. It has to be consistent. So one has to be sincere and consistent. What is meant by consistent? Basically, they have to be doing whatever the service or whatever that's being done with both sincerity and consistency, day in and day out, whatever the thing. And so when we are chanting, we have to have the same sincerity to call out the Lord's name, and the same consistency. And the same thing with any of the services that we get the opportunity, we should do those things in the same way. Because there is the other example, the other example in the Chaitanya Charitamrita is this devotee named Kalidas, right? Anybody knows about Kalidas? So Kalidas was a very humble. Oh, of course, Sarvabhauma Prabhu knows. He is actually he was a very sincere devotee, and he always used to take the dust and remnants of devotees. That's what he was very well known for. And it is said that in Chaitanya Charitamrita, it's said that he took all the Vaishnavas in Bengal, the dust and remnants. So wherever he's not like we only go for the whoever is the highest in the ladder, right? Only when a Maharaj or somebody comes, we go for the remnants or dust. But this devotee Kalidas, he was seeking, irrespective of what is their status, any Vaishnava in Bengal, he went and got their dust and remnants. And so after he finished all the Bengali Vaishnavas, then he went to Jagannath Puri. And then, of course, because Lord Chaitanya was residing in Jagannath Puri. So this time he went for the highest. So he went for Lord Chaitanya. So every day when Lord Chaitanya used to go and to take darshan of Lord Jagannath, he used to go in front of the temple, and one of his servants used to wash his feet, and then he used to go. And so one day Lord Chaitanya was doing the same thing, and this Kalidas showed up, and as they were washing the feet of Lord Chaitanya, he kind of captured the water that was flowing through the what you call the nala or whatever, and he was drinking. And so Lord Chaitanya was very particular. He never let anybody touch his feet, or he was very strict about that, because he was playing the humble devotee role. So he was the epitome of humility. So he didn't want anybody to touch his lotus feet. And and of course, forget about drinking water from the lotus feet. So this Kalidas was doing that. And so when everybody was shocked, and all the devotees were trying to pull Kalidas away. And of course, by then he already did two sips and third sips also. And they were trying to pull him away. And then Lord Chaitanya said, that's fine, he can have that sip. But that's the last. I'm going to let him do. So why Lord Chaitanya had offered that privilege to Kalidas? Because of his sincerity and also consistency. It's not that he just showed up at Lord Chaitanya and he asked for the duster thing. He was consistently doing to all the other Vaishnavas, and that's what attracted Lord Chaitanya to shower his mercy on him. And in fact, it is said that Lord Chaitanya offered his remnants immediately to that same day to Kalidas. So that's what the sincerity and the consistency are required in our devotional service. And what does that do? When we have that sincerity and consistency, we talked about our body is a house, right? And typically, a house has a door to go out. But it is said that if the door is locked from outside, what is it called? Where do they lock the doors from outside? Prison. And if the door is locked from inside, it's a house, right? So unfortunately, most people, they don't know where the door for the body or the house, because that's why it's locked from outside. And so that's why it's called, this material world is like a prison house. But if the devotee with his sadhana, he can actually discover the door where it is. But of course, the material illusory energy is so potent. So what does it do? So it's like a story like where one guy was in a room, and his eyes are blindfolded, and they told him that there is a door, and as soon as you find the door, you can get out. And so, and they just rolled him up and put him in the room, and so he's trying to find the door, but every time he almost got to the door, he got something else, like a bug came or a fly came on his thing, or he was trying to some sound, and he got distracted, and then he lost the door. That's actually us. Because when we are, through our, whatever the sadhana that we are doing, when we are almost to reach the body, the illusory energy throws something, some distraction at us. And we get all fuzzled, and then we lose the door, access to the door. And so that's why we get stuck in this thing. And so, so what we need to understand, how can we find the door? We have to seek the guidance of a guru. Because the guru can, even though we are blindfolded, if somebody is there that can guide us, hey, you go this side, and take, that's where is the door, that's how we can actually get out. So guru is very important, and the guru's krupa. So that's where, if we are doing sincere and consistent service, and then Lord Krishna's mercy will flow through guru. Of course, it is said that there are 6 types of gurus, right? And one of the guru is, Chaitya Guru is super soul. The super soul is actually initially the one that guides us towards our path. Because when we have the sincere desire and we are seeking this spiritual knowledge or spiritual perfection, then the super soul, as Chaitya Guru, he guides us to our Vartama Pradaksha Guru, or our Diksha Guru, or our Shiksha Guru, and so he guides us. Because it is said in this purport that the super soul, the Lord as being super soul, he is being so merciful, irrespective of whatever the form of life that we took, all the way from ant. And it is said that even worm in the stool, the Lord was there along with us as a super soul. So he is so merciful to us. So we need to seek that krupa, or the mercy of the Supreme Lord. And and how does the krupa comes? Sadhana brings krupa. By consistently and sincerely performing the sadhana, that's the only way. But of course, just by sadhana we cannot do it. It is only by krupa. Because, if you think about it, the chanting or the devotional service that so-called devotional service that we are performing, it's actually pathetic, right? What are the chances that we will, how many lifetimes we need to get out of this thing with the way that we are doing it? Of course, maybe I'm speaking for myself, not. But the thing is, but only by the mercy of our Guru and Krishna, we have a hope. Otherwise, forget about it. And so, I think we are almost there. So what we need to do is, we need to identify our direction versus pleasures. Right? In the case of example of Dhruva, he had 2 mothers, right? Of course, Suniti and Suruchi, right? Niti means direction. Ruchi means pleasure. So he could have basically, when his mother gave him the direction on how to achieve, and how to achieve what he wanted to achieve, which is he wanted to just sit on his father's lap. And of course, when we seek a direction, especially a spiritual direction, there are going to be some obstacles. Just like Dhruva, he had to go to the forest and he has to perform austerities. Can you imagine a 6-year-old boy doing all those things? He could have just said, okay, Mother Ruchi, Suruchi, I'll do whatever you want. And probably he could have got on the lap of Uttanapada. But he chose the direction over pleasure. And ultimately, he became very successful. Not only, forget about the material, whatever the pleasure that he was seeking, he got much beyond that. So as practicing sadhakas, we also need to seek out with a sincerity and consistency the direction, and take the direction from our Guru and Shastra, and seek out the purpose of this material body and this material life, so that we can get the perfection and we can get the mercy, ultimate mercy of the Supreme Lord. All right, I will end here. Any questions or comments? We have 30 seconds. Okay, looks like everybody understood the topic, and sorry.
I just wanted to appreciate and then also add on one of the points you were making. about the need for like knowledge in order to actually understand our position. It said in the last sentence of the purport, in ignorance, however, the conditioned soul considers himself the proper object of service and thus misunderstands the entire existential situation. So he starts off on a faulty basis without actually understanding the proper sambandha with his relationship with Krishna. He's
Right.
just thinking, I'm in the center. Or if not directly, he's thinking, it's like expanded self or extended selfishness, ultimately to the point of like impersonal liberation.
Right, right, yeah. I mean, we start off with a totally wrong notion because we, as I was explaining, the ahankara, right? That's the first thing that gets generated, the false ego. Ahankara is false ego. So as soon as we come into this material existence, we kind of get hit with that ahankara, and we kind of forget about the whole thing. And we misunderstand the rest of the stuff. I mean, because if we don't have the proper knowledge to start with. All right, thank you so much. And Grandraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaura Premanande.